Okay, we are gonna go there, gonna go here. Hi, welcome to the first live version of the Graveyard Gush. Something I've been wanting to try for a while now. I'm, by the way, James Flintworth Burns, here with a few of my most beloved horror co-hosts, correspondents, enjoyers of all of the macabre and disgusting, and let's just get up to these lovely ladies, and there we are. Here we go. And we are here to talk about The Substance, a fantastic movie that came out in September, so a little bit behind. Here we are in November, but as I say, better late than never. I didn't realize I was going to rhyme to doing that. Fun. But from your perspectives at home, going clockwise, at 2 o'clock, we have Kimberly. At 6 o'clock, we have Tiffany. And over at 11, we have Brittany. Now, before I forget, the show, Graveyard Gush, is something we started earlier this year. I've been mostly doing it pre-recorded and edited this and that. Unfortunately, though we have recorded a few more episodes, like we had Long Legs recorded like in July and a Texas Chainsaw soon afterwards, I've been so freaking busy, I've not got a chance to get them out. So hence we've moved to live streaming to get this thing out that much faster. Yeah. And you know what? It's fine. I like the... What's the phrase I'm looking for here? The off-the-cuff, the raw reactions and discussions and gushing. Now, if you're watching this after the fact or lurking there in the abyss, Graveyard Gush is the show where we go and just gush about our favorite horror movies, or more particular, going forward, just horror movies in general. We don't care if it's good or bad. We're just here to just share a love of it. And boy, howdy, going into this film, at least for me, I knew all three of you loved it to death. So before I get to my opinions, one of you three take it away. Well, what do you think of The Substance?
This was probably one of the most fun theater experiences I think I've had. I think, honestly, the one that beats it still was when we went and saw Freaky, because that was a really good theater experience because it was right after the pandemic.
Yeah.
But it was crazy, and I'm so glad that I really didn't know anything about it going into it.
Yeah. Nor did I, really.
Yeah. For me, I obviously hated the movie. It is not anything precious to me whatsoever. No,
Really?
Might be one of my favorite movies. It's definitely top 5 movie for me, and it battles favorites for like 1, 2, 3. It's just really hard to make decisions like that. It is the only time in my life I have involuntarily leapt my feet and cheered in a movie theater. I love everything about this movie, and if you want gushing, I have never seen a movie that gushes more than this.
Yeah, excellent point. Pardon my wild panther here. I had such a good time watching this movie. First of all, in the theater, because going in completely blind was really the best way to do it. And then rewatching it again last night was experience because it was an even better experience because now, like, knowing where the movie went and how everything fit together, it was just an even richer experience the second time. So it's definitely a big favorite of mine this year, particularly.
Yeah, for me, I enjoyed it about altogether like 95% of it. I was very much, I know it's going to be, keening some heartstrings there. As I told Brittany and Tiff last night, I enjoyed the journey thoroughly. The final destination was kind of a disappointment for me, kind of threw me off. But we'll get to that in a hot sec. For those who have never seen any trailers, or even heard of The Substance until now, The Substance, as it says here on Wikipedia, is a 2024 satirical body horror film written, directed, co-edited, and co-produced by Coralie, Fargeat? I'm probably going to pronounce that wrong. It follows a fading celebrity, Demi Moore, who uses a black market drug that creates a much younger version of herself, played by Margaret cutely, with unexpected side effects. And yeah, to me, it's almost like a modern day Jekyll and Hyde kind of story. I don't know how many times I said while watching, I felt like I was experiencing like a classic Gothic film. We're talking like, the real Vincent Price, almost Edgar Allan Poe, just mental breakdowns live on screen. Like I was going in expecting more, I want to say, like Society, or even a bit more like The Fly at times. But instead, no, it was much more subtle, and I just adored that to no end, especially what it had to say about, what it's like to be a woman in Hollywood, which I'm going to go throw out to you three, because that must have hit home so much harder than me as a guy.
I was kind of curious as to if you were going to like it as much as we were, because we are women versus you who is not, which is totally fine, and you are allowed to like this movie even if you're not a woman. But
Yeah.
I will say that as somebody with very low self-esteem, I got into the movie and I was kind of like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't be watching this right now. But honestly, I think it talks to more about just women in general and not necessarily women in Hollywood.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and oh, go ahead, Brittany.
Oh no, Kimberly, you go first.
I was gonna say for us even, we are about 50% the audience I think it's looking for, but I'm way even more interested in people like my mom. I've been begging my mom to watch this movie. People who grew up with Demi Moore being their young heartthrob who's now in this role in this way, because with the themes being so heavy on your value and what you can provide the world being so directly linked to your beauty and your body and your youth, reaching that kind of tipping point, like I cannot wait to experience this movie again when I'm over the age of 40. You know what I mean? But it hits hard, and I felt so understood by a female director who wasn't afraid to hide in subtlety too much and said, no, this is the point we're making, and we're going to use every visual, every tool in the book, every metaphor, everything, and we're not going to do it quietly. We're going to loudly shout this theme over and over and over in every act, so that by the end you can laugh at the dark comedy of it, but also walk away feeling like you've been punched in the face over and over again. Like, what an experience.
Oh yeah, it's because you're right. It's very clear in its messaging. I appreciate how in one section it's subtle, in the other it's not, and subtlety in the sense of we are not explicitly in our protagonist's head, so we can't fully understand her personal reasoning, but we do understand like her reasoning and how she goes about things. And Jim and I even had an interesting conversation when you were talking about how she was managing the split, about like, oh well, I don't understand why she doesn't still exist in the world as Elizabeth, and could show up as, oh, this is my daughter, we reconnected, or I'm her manager, or something like that. And I'm like, see, if this was a man, that's how this movie would play out. And that's just not the kind of story that they're trying to tell. It's something that is much, I think, for my perspective and my experience as a woman in the world, is much more easily understood than it is to explain.
Yeah.
To kind of clarify, I was kind of going for that, because you're right, like,
oh yeah, and I want to clarify, that wasn't a bad take on the movie.
oh
I
no,
was
yeah,
saying
no,
that would be the default if it was a male character.
Yeah, I guess because I had spent so much time, growing up with like watching vampire films and just various like other immortality kind of stories. I've seen it kind of done before. And it wasn't to be like, why, to quote Futurama, I don't see why the one lawyer doesn't eat the other lawyer. No, in this case, it was very much a like putting myself in that place, knowing full well like what they're trying to go for, but also being like, man, it's kind of, I guess I was trying to come from the same point of view as I would watching like a slasher, like, oh, get out of there, what are you doing? That was me kind of like, what are you doing? You can really play your cards right with this, but because I also brought up
completely understandable.
yeah, and I guess a big part of it was inspired by why I even said it like I did, was because I'm so used to seeing actresses like Jamie Lee Curtis, who is such a powerhouse in Hollywood. Be like, oh, I could totally see Jamie Lee Curtis, if she would go do this, be like, oh yeah, here's my cousin from Sweden, yes. Cami G. Critis? Yeah. I'm your new manager. But no, that's fine, because as the time went on, I clearly could see it's not to take that much time to find out that the point isn't how to properly use this substance to live forever. No, it's more so a dive on just self-hatred and just what Hollywood, what the world, what society does to women in particular to make them hate themselves and contort to just horrible standards of just beauty.
The one thing that I really loved about this movie too is that it didn't shy away. Sorry, somebody really wants to play. It didn't shy away from showing every inch of skin. Like, they had some very unflattering shots. And I applaud the actresses, and not even just the actresses. There were some male butts as well. Like, this movie was obsessed with butts, but they, like, being able to respect the director's vision enough to put yourself in that uncomfortable situation is absolutely amazing to me, because there's a lot. I should say there's very little left up to the imagination in that movie.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, and the just gorgeous creature work, like when Elizabeth, after like her third time having her life sucked out of her, coming out full on, like I think I said like swamp hag, that was just so good.
Witch finger.
The witch finger too, yeah. I've clearly been playing way too much Baldur's Gate, because that's just, I think you even said it too, it was like Glenn Close, Tiffany. That
I kept saying that she looked like Glenn Close, which is not which is nothing bad against Glenn Close. It's just like, for some reason, the facial structure reminded me of Glenn Close.
And I think that some things that are really cool about it too is that the movie leaves space for the metaphor to double over on itself in many ways. So you have obviously the metaphor of your older self resenting your younger self, and not respecting the balance, not recognizing that you are one, and that's something that they hit over and over again. But you also have this metaphor of, with this mother role, she even says that she's taking care of her sick mother, so how mothers can begin to resent their daughters as they come into their adulthood and their sexuality, and there's this complex envy that sometimes comes into play in toxic mother-daughter relationships. And then on top of that, I felt that this was one of the most over the head but also really well executed addiction metaphors, and how the idea that there are two versions of yourself. There's the version of yourself who is behaving irrationally and out of addiction and who is selfish, and then there's the version of yourself who is reaping the repercussions of that and hating the selfish version and not being able to reconcile the two. One of my favorite things that I saw online following this movie was when people are like, well, trust me, like, I would respect the balance, give me the chance, like, and people making jokes, of course, but the response is saying any person who would respect the balance wouldn't get it to begin with. And that's really the catch, that it has to come from this
that's a great point.
Need.
Well, and going with the stuff you were saying too, like even the verbiage she used when she kept coming back in, she's like, oh, we're going to be doing the cover of Vogue, so I just need a few more days. Oh, I just need a few more days because now we're doing this. And it's kind of like, that's how that verbiage happens for that type of addiction.
I want to go back to something you said, Jim, about the idea of immortality.
Yeah.
Because it did occur to me last night when we were watching it. I'm like, this isn't truly immortality, which makes
No.
it worse. The Matrix, the original body, is still subject to life and the march of time. And as we saw at the end of the movie, you cannot make another one from the other self. And the fact that someone would choose to do that knowing that they're really not buying more time. They're just choosing to continue, and especially in Elizabeth's case, continue this cycle that brought her so much grief in the first place is what makes it more of a tragedy for me. Because, again, she's just choosing to feed herself through the cycle one more time. And in doing so, continuing to perpetuate that negative view of her self-worth, her actual self-worth, and doing to widen that gap between the fact that it is all her, but widening the gap between her true self, her real self, and the other self, which is, for all intents and purposes, a body she wears.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up.
It really emphasizes the fact that people who will use the substance won't respect the balance, because if you respected the balance, you would not use the substance.
Yeah. Now I'm glad you brought that up because I went on to like I always like to do when I watch any movie nowadays and read the people's breakdowns on TV tropes, and I saw that like someone pointed out how your new body will last at best another 30 years. If anything, you're just choosing to spend your last 30 years of your life full, almost in your youth. If anything, one analogy I loved is that it's almost like getting plastic surgery, which also can go bad, which it can also lead to all kinds of health complications if you don't respect it, which I think was a great point that I saw. One thing I do want to bring up was just the level of acting, not just from the two leads, which I have to say, which goes without saying, are fucking phenomenal. Gwen Moore, God, it took me forever until this morning I actually went to do some research. Not Gwen Moore, Demi Moore. I keep doing that. Demi Moore, fantastic. Like, she's Esmeralda from Hunchback of Notre Dame. She is G.I. Jane.
G.I. Jane.
Yeah.
This is in her was so brilliant, and why I really want to see what my mom says when she watches it, because of who Demi Moore was when she was younger. Like, that's brilliant casting.
Exactly.
I think it also goes to the point that Demi Moore is so amazing by the fact that they're talking about it's her 50th birthday. They're firing her because she's past her prime, and she's played by 61-year-old Demi Moore, who still looks freaking gorgeous.
Yeah, which, ironically, if you think about it, is also kind of a, exactly what the movie is trying to say. Like, we're so trained as society to be like, gosh, she's 60? She looks 50. Like, the substance would say, that's exactly what we're trying to call you out on. Which I also, which I adore. But I was reading how her manager, who in the film is played by Dennis Quaid, I guess it was originally going to be Ray Liotta from Goodfellas.
Oh, yeah.
Before he passed away.
Oh, okay.
And I could kind of see it.
Yeah.
With just that kind of like mob boss, New Jersey kind of like styles. I personally haven't really read anything too much about Dennis Quaid as a human being outside of, his acting career, but just finding out that he went out above and beyond, I guess, to like make the shrimp eating scene, which if you've seen the movie, you know exactly the moment I'm talking about. He tried to make it as disgusting as possible. I guess going through almost 2 kilos of shrimp.
He exceeded in my opinion, because we have this whole like ending gore sequence and body horror and all that, and I'm still mostly disgusted by the shrimp scene in this movie.
Yeah. And I can't believe I fucking missed this, but I guess during his introduction to the bathroom, I love how you pointed out that he takes him forever to actually go and like take a piss, but he doesn't wash his hands when he leaves.
No.
I did really miss that. Oh.
It's just so many little things about him that make him disgusting, and it's you could look at his actions and call him disgusting, like we know that, but there's all these other tiny little things, like it's the way the camera's in super close to his face, and how we see him leer, how we see him handle other people in the room, how he brushes them off, who he thinks is important and who isn't. It's so good because he doesn't come out like the overt bad guy, except for that one time we weren't supposed to hear him on the phone going, I don't give a, whatever that we owe her. Just get her off TV.
Yeah.
He could be feasibly any person in real life. And that sucks.
Yeah.
I love how Coralie really represented men in the movie because it's comic. It is caricature-like. It is deliberately over the top. The whole movie stylized, but especially the greatest vision of it is in the third act with Monster Elisa Sue, and you've got all the men crowded around telling her to smile when she's clearly really messed up. But having this comic thing, I love what it's doing because it's not saying this is exactly what men are like. It's saying this is what it feels like to be a woman in a room full of men, because you can tell what the vibe is, you can feel their eyes, you can feel what they're thinking, and she managed to use tools and film and caricature to say, hey, man or woman in the audience, you're going to watch it and it's going to feel the way that it would feel, which is just brilliant filmmaking.
Yeah, God, you've done about the scene, but I guess when it's like the manager with the the board behind him, all the executives and all that. To me, I think that shot of him, to see a smile, to me was the most sickening scene of the whole film, and one of the I want to say high points. Mainly not because of what's going on, but because of the impact it has on the moment of the story. Like, to me, it's such a great this thing to hammer home that they're all so goddamn oblivious to the pain she's feeling right now. Like, oh, she's just pre-show stutters, about to go do something really big. It's fine, sweetheart. Just smile and just show confidence. That's what the camera loves. Ugh. God, I hate that. And
pretty girls should smile.
Yeah.
One time I had a manager told me I would have more sales if I wore lipstick. So they say that.
Yeah. And so I'm going to open the can of worms.
Yes.
Because, Jim, I have heard from my dear friends in the room that you didn't like the third act, or at least the finale of the third act. You didn't like quite exactly how we stuck the landing. So I want to give my quick 2 cents on the third act, or on the sticking of the landing, and then open it for discussion here.
Fight.
No.
But I do kind of want to give my little thesis on why I think in my opinion, this is a perfect movie, and you don't have to love it the way I love it, but I want to tell you why I love it, because I didn't get to watch it with you. But for me, and for those of you guys, I mean, I hope you've seen the movie if you've stuck around this long, but it is one of the craziest endings. There is blood spraying the entire audience while ballet is happening. It's dramatic. You've got the dream fantasy world that Monster Elisa Sue is in as she feels finally free, and then you've got the horror of everyone else out there. And for me, it so perfectly embodies that they've taken the world where we are looking for salaciousness. We are looking for over the top. We want everything to be, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but sexualized and objectified.
Eccentric?
Kind of, but exaggerated, and that's what she's been asked of. That's what she's been asked of for success on the show, is just how over the top can we make your sexuality, your body. And so it feels like kind of a fuck you to, we've made it past our YouTube babysitter line. It feels like kind of a fuck you to Hollywood to say, hey, you asked for a show, let me give you a show. And she's finally free from the confines of her body, and it's her body at its rawest, quite literally, and at its most disgusting and torn apart. And that freedom and lack of sexuality in its most overt way is what horrifies the audience, but also allows her to finally love herself from the beginning, which is taping. She tapes Elizabeth's face. She doesn't tape Sue's face. She picks original self as the picture beauty, and she goes and she's finally at peace on her Hollywood star that was hers, even though it was trashed and awful. And so for me, it being as over the top as it was just the perfect stick the landing in your face. You want a show? Here's a show, and it's what you thought you wanted, and it's not what you wanted at all, because you didn't want her. You wanted the idealized image of her. So I loved the ending, and I loved how brave it was. And yes, that is the point in the movie where I stood up and cheered, because I couldn't physically figure out what to do. I was cackling and crying. My body was overwhelmed. But the ending, I think, is what people are going to talk about for a long time. And I've noticed it's the sticking point online where people either feel like I do, and they're like, yes, it was perfect. Or they're like, I love the movie until the ending, and I wish it ended with a teeth pulling scene, and then it was perfect. So that's my little thesis on it. I'll zip up. I just wanted to open the can of worms.
Okay.
Before Jim goes into your thing, you made me realize something that I guess I never thought about before, because you're talking about how they want it to be overly sexualized. They have these topless dancers, which topless dancers on a New Year's Eve broadcast on TV. Okay, interesting. But when she has her moment, she literally coughs up a breast out of an orifice and it falls to the ground. So you're like, you wanted topless and sexual organs? Here is a sexual organ.
Yeah.
It's a great statement on how we normalize a lot of shit as a society, about all these topless women. And there is a intentional shot of a young girl in the audience, which is, yep, we're normalizing this for the next generation. This is nothing but meat. And also the intentional shot of blood spray across a butt. I loved that. I loved everything that said, because it wasn't just a panning shot. It was a stationary shot, and we saw the blood spatter right across it. And I have more thoughts about how nudity is portrayed in this movie, but I'm going to let Jim talk first.
Okay.
Yes, Jim, please take the floor.
All right, I will take the floor. First of all, I do want to say I have noticed there are some people in the chat. I saw Tin Cat earlier, and presently Baka Tanuki. Just so you know, about to go and talk about the ending of The Substance. So if you don't want any spoilers, oops. But anyway, my take on the ending. I'm not one of those people who think that it should have ended at the teeth pull. I think it should still include a element of the, her going to the show. I guess the part that gets me was not really what happens, it's the tone of it. Because I was laughing too at the very end of it. And I know it's a satirical take, but it was the satire was so light and like kind of balanced with the tragedy of the moment, or the moment of the story for so long that when it gets to the end and you have the boob drop and the blood spraying, it felt like, to me, it almost kind of left the realm of The Substance and gone into the world of almost like Evil Dead, where it got too goofy for me, where I want to say I lost my sense of disbelief. I just lost my sense of what I was on. I felt like, I got into like Pirates of the Caribbean and then suddenly found myself in It's a Small World. And it was just kind of jarring for me at that point. Now, I guess how I would have liked to have seen, or I want to say expected, but would have liked to kind of see, was more of like, her not really making it to the actual studio. Like, almost, I would kind of like to have seen almost a side-by-side kind of downfall of her leaving her place, all dressed up, looking beautiful, where externally she is sludging her way to the studio, and her body's, like we've seen already, breaking down bit by bit as everything is just falling apart because she's run herself ragged. Whereas mentally, she is finally allowing herself to kind of be back in that moment, and kind of like having that kind of compare and contrast between like how in some unfortunate twists of fate she finally finds at peace when she is starting to finally, leave the mortal coil. Almost kind of like Kafkaesque, or even uh, Poesque, I guess, is what I would use the term of phrase. In that, like the entire time as she's going through this, vision right back to the studio, she starts off with Sue, but as she gets closer and closer to that moment, she becomes more and more of herself mentally as she finally starts to get rid of that other version, the version she's trying to pursue, and is finally happy to be herself on stage. And then ended, please, with her body deflating on her star. It is a great way to end the film. I guess that's for me why I say that little final bit just kind of takes me out of it, because yes, I love me some gore. I love me some slapstick and boob drops, but I don't know. I guess this the execution in the end is how it kind of lost me. But I respect their choice. I love that they did it, and I would still tell people to go see it, honestly.
Jim.
And I get where you're coming from. Oh, go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, Jim, if we reframe it as a cathartic moment, then does that change it for you? Because if you take the idea of, like, say, Jekyll and Hyde again, where there's also that burden of hiding the double identity, now we've got this layer of internal conflict and societal conflict and all the pressure leading up to it. The reason the ending works for me, aside from goofiness aside, because I feel like we've been slowly introduced to that over the course of the movie. It's part of the world building, especially when you get to the fight between Elizabeth and Sue, where Sue literally kicks that bitch across the living room.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of go, okay, we're in this world. I feel like that scene at the end is more necessary than having her die on the street, because her nature and her acceptance of herself is released to the world, particularly the people who put those bonds, or partially put those bonds on her. So the former manager and the board and stuff, and having them soaked in blood as she spins in bliss and agony is perfect for me. And so I wonder if reframing it as a catharsis and as unleashing that identity to the world helps, like, changes that ending for you. It's okay if it doesn't. But that's how I saw it. So I have to wonder if that helps for you.
After Kimberly gives her thoughts, I have a technical question about something that might have changed the ending.
Okay, it's very similar to what Brittany was saying too, kind of in response to your thoughts, Jim, is for me it feels, like you said, cathartic. It feels like the perfect feminine rage feeling, especially in the moment that we're in right now. I'm kind of glad that we're talking about this movie right now and maybe not even a week ago. And this isn't getting too deep on politics, but in a society that says that we owe the world our bodies as women, it feels really satisfying to get her up there and be like, you want me? You want all of me? You want my body? Take it. And throwing your body in their face in the most literal, gory, slap across the audience way. And they didn't want it because they don't want her, but it's just the perfect answer to it. The whole movie is somehow we want more of you, we want more of you, we want more of you, and finally she gives them everything.
This
and
full-on Cronenbergian explosion on the laps.
Yes, that's the level of intensity that in my soul I want to respond to the world with. And so and I feel like we might get a more tasteful, perhaps, display of that from a male director who perhaps has not been asked to give his body to the world in the same way. But I think that Coralie comes at it with the level of intensity that I'm like, yes, that's how I feel. And I haven't seen anything so over the top on screen, but that's like the intensity that it feels in me. And so that's why it was satisfying. It was cathartic. So yes, I love that.
I love that everybody has these like really deep kind of meanings, and my main thought is just like it was so over the top when we got Monstro Elizasu that I was like, there has to be something even more over the top to end this, because I don't see where this is going to go from here. So I was just happy to get an over the top bloodbath, because I'm like, it's already over the top and I don't know where we're going from here.
Yeah.
My question.
Don't misunderstand me. I was there for the blood too.
Yeah,
Oh,
same.
yeah.
I mean, I was expecting more of that blood gushy gooiness throughout the entire film, so I was happy to see it. But go ahead.
No, my question is so this, and this is getting technical again, really, with this ending, is that Monster Elizasu comes out of Sue's body. She never stabilizes. So is the whole reason that she melts away because she never stabilized? And if she would have stabilized, would she have been stuck as Monster Elizasu?
I don't think she had anything to stabilize off of.
Yeah, it's a copy of a copy at that point.
True.
Yeah, you ever done a Xerox of a Xerox?
Exactly.
And it looks terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess this is why I'm glad we have this show. I'm glad we have movies like this, because it's so important for to have these multiple perspectives. Because going to go roll back to me brought up earlier in this conversation was just how like the difference between like what it's like to see this film from a female perspective versus a male, where I'm here like been through so many classic male stories, kind of expected more of like that mental degradation, and I totally see, you know, how that display of like you kind of want, you know, that feminine side, just, you know, here, you want me, here you go, here's all of me, which is valid as well, and I love that. Does it change my take that how the execution of it is still a bit sloppy and doesn't really hit the tone? I would say so. Only because, like, yes, you know, but the point she's kicking, you know, hurled herself across the room like she's the goddamn Terminator is loony toony. But I guess I would still personally would have liked a bit more, I don't want to say realism, a bit more just balance, because she kind of sludges up to the studio door, and the intern's like, "Oh, you're here, Blob Sue. Come on in. I'm not gonna question the mask at all." Like, I guess
you know that wasn't actually happening, right?
How do we know? It's that we don't really.
That was in her head, because she has all these people. It's in her head and what she's imagining, because it's her getting in there. This guy's like, "Yep, you look perfect. Let's get on." And then she's met with all these people in the hallway telling her how amazing she is, how beautiful she is. But nobody's actually in the hallway. They're all waiting for her to go on stage and waiting for her up there. So all that never actually happened. She was imagining that in her
okay. I mean,
chaotic mind.
I mean, I'll concede that. I just guess it would have been nice to also have seen, like, maybe I missed it, but was there like a shot of her, like, you know, talking to an empty doorway? Because I know when she got to the hallway, clearly there was no one there, and she was being applauded all down. But for that bit, I guess I read it as, oh, that actually happened, because it was getting to the point was not really clear. I guess it's also a lot of this, my feelings stem from, was when she is finally on stage. We're not hearing like distant cries of like, "Oh dear God, what is that?" As the audience members are starting to wonder one more, "Hey, wow, what's going on? This must be some kind of show about to come here on stage." I guess that's a bit more of what I would, even if if I had to compromise, I guess I'd like to have heard a little bit more of that, because I don't know how, unless her backup dancers are awfully trained or just assume, hey, this is part of the show, how she could possibly make it to the very center stage at this New Year's Eve shooting in California, not New York, which is another detail that kind of bothers me. Why was it not in Times Square or something like that? I know, logistics and money. Expensive to shoot there. Yeah, there's a little bit of hints of just like, I guess that's why I wanted the kind of the dualness to it all.
I'll speak to one thing.
Yes, please.
Because as a theater practitioner myself, and as a person who was present for an event at a theater show that is kind of outside of the norm and unprecedented, people don't always respond, you think, in the way they think you think they will.
Yeah.
Either because, you know,
a lot of what happens in theater shows, especially high stakes ones, is you have to keep the show running. And God forbid you're the one who causes a scene when I can't believe you missed the fact that we were putting our star in a full prosthetic suit and you caused a fuss for no reason. Like, God forbid you're the person who missed the memo and ruined it. And aside from that, you know, from a audience member's angle, they're not going to know what it is. And there's something to be said for shock too, when people aren't sure what they're seeing. Again, people don't always behave the way we expect them to, and we don't always behave and react to unprecedented situations the way we expect them to either. So I'll speak for that. But if you're not aware of that, I can also see how you can look at that and go, what the fuck are these people doing? That's a big conglomeration of stuff that you might not buy. But even further on that point, like, I'm already, like, bought into the absurdity of the story, where a DNA split can come out of someone's spine with no issue, and we can feed them off of an air bubble filled, condensed milk package for a week. It's one of those things that me personally, I was willing to accept because I was also so on board with the cinematography and the music and the acting and the directing. I was already so on board with it. I was said, yep, I can go with this. However, with that in mind, I could totally get why you wouldn't. I hear you, and that's very valid.
I will say I'm the same way where, you know, I'm such a stickler about, like, medical accuracy for things, and even I was kind of like,
we were talking about that throughout the entire viewing.
I'm gonna go with it. I'm just gonna go with it. I'm not gonna mention how I'm like, oh, she would still be bleeding out completely from the spine. How is she not bleeding out? No, we're just gonna let it go. I'm not gonna do that.
No.
I'm just gonna enjoy the ride.
One of our viewers brought up there is a term for what happens with, like, the constant copying. It's generation loss. It's a noun for degradation of quality
thank you for the
resulting
education.
from imperfect reproduction techniques. So, cool.
Ooh, can I bring up a really fun factor about what did you guys think of the effects? I loved them.
Yes, please.
I'm also so amazed that one of the biggest things I know that everyone talks about, but I'm going to bring it up anyway, is how Margaret had a completely fake chest. Her breasts were completely prosthetic, and and I was like, I had no idea. They were everything was so good. You had no idea.
I love that.
Special effects were definitely a 10 on this one.
Yeah, and thank you, by the way, for the segue, because as much as I do enjoy a good debate, I did like this movie a lot. I don't want to spend all of it defending my probably bad views of the ending, because the rest of it's so good.
You don't have a bad opinion.
Okay,
you don't have a bad opinion. You have an opinion, and unfortunately, it's the minority opinion in this group. Don't feel like your opinion's bad or wrong.
Okay, well,
it's not
still,
bad.
moving on.
I just want to give credit where credit's due, because the effects, the practical effects in this movie were so good.
And I love how you pointed out, because I acknowledged it as well. I was like, it was awesome. Was that this whole thing starts to give some buck or other people out there some context. I've seen this before. The substance, when you inject it, it basically creates like an osmosis effect where like a whole new you comes out of your back, almost like a slit. I'm not sure how to describe it other than just you almost like a Russian doll, a new you, bloodily on the floor. And when she came out, I really love the fact that, and thank you for pointing this out, Tiff, that she does have pubic hair. She's not, smooth.
Oh, yeah.
She has
pubic hair. Because guess what? Even a perfect person has to do things to, the quote-unquote perfect person has to do something to make them even more perfect in most of society's eyes. Because guess what? You're not born hairless.
Yeah. And no, it wasn't like shitting of a skin. It looks like it's shitting of a skin, but they basically grow a whole new you inside of you, and then you just kind of like pop out. This other one pops out of the back of you, and I guess the science says you do kind of share a mind, but not really a hive mind, because you kind of like, you jump consciousness back and forth between the two every week, which of course they don't do, and things are spiral out of control from there. But it just seems so uncomfortable, and very Stanley Kubrick-esque in just the whole mind scape that happens
and that
during it.
stark white bathroom makes
Yeah.
it look like such like a scientific laboratory.
Yes.
Because there's so much use of color in this movie because Elizabeth is very blue. Sue is very pink. At the end, Sue, when she's trying to make a copy of herself, is back in blue because she's no longer perfect and needs to be perfect. So that's why she tries to make the new Sue.
Yeah.
And just it all goes back to this incredibly stark white, like feelingless bathroom. That's where Elizabeth has to lay on the floor for a week. That's where she decides that she's going to do, like, it's such a harsh environment, especially compared to like the deep velvet colors of the apartment in general. And the use of hallways. Oh my gosh, there's so much artistic, like there's so much artistic value in this movie.
It's like reading a graphic novel of some of these shots and choice of colors. I think it was one of my favorite parts of the whole film was just the angles of everything. And just knowing that it was prominently filmed in Paris is great, in my opinion, too, because you can't tell. Because usually you expect, oh, it's California with all the palm trees and all. They must have done like some on-location shots later on. But just that back alley where you get this stuff, where you tap in and the gate only opens up halfway. So you literally have to kind of crawl into almost like an underworld kind of tunnel to get their stuff. And I have to double check. Maybe you all saw it on repeated viewings, but I guess as time goes on, there's like less and less lockers with like numbers on them as she goes and gets more of her stuff. It's like the other test subjects or clients are literally dying off across the city.
Well, and you guys are talking about visuals. One thing I have adored, and please, for everyone watching and for you guys, go look these videos up if you haven't seen them. But the amount of shot-for-shot references to other famous horror movies. You have shots directly from The Shining, directly from Psycho, shots directly from Picture of Dorian Gray, shots direct, like, it is so referential in what it's doing, and it's incredible. And so one thing that I think that female directors in particular really run into in the horror genre, a genre that's very much so built on male perspectives, is being accused of not doing your homework and not knowing the genre, especially when you're making a very feminine statement. And so to have a movie that so boldly is pulling all of these really bold, incredible references to movies that people know and respect that are like staples in the community, it's fantastic. And so first, I mean, go watch the videos that pull all the shots. There's like dozens of them in this movie that are exact remakes, but it's also just, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I do want to know, though, does Herbert West know that they stole his reagent to make this film? Because
I love that it's
He's
reanimated.
I don't think he knows.
I think this is one of the references that we're making.
Yeah,
I think that
yeah.
it's very cognizant of its
Absolutely.
place in genre, and I love it. Oh, and that's what gives us
I'm
this
so
sense
sorry.
of fear.
Kona.
can't hear a thing, honestly.
You can't hear him; it's editing him out.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
He's barking at the neighbor.
Is he? Oh, I haven't heard a
This-
thing. But go ahead, Brittany.
God. This movie is really a feast for the eyes, not just for like a horror fan. Which, oh yeah, clocking all those references is so delightful. But even like the long shots, like I saw you, Jim, last night get really excited about the one where she is curled up in the bottom of the shower and the shower just goes
Yes.
on forever.
Yes.
filling up.
It was so
It's
sexy.
such a great.
I mean,
I-
not the crying in the shower bit, just like the shot
The
itself.
cinematography was
Yeah.
sexy, yeah. It is sexy because the color choice, the framing, and how we choose to tell the story beyond just dialogue is so. It was so delicious. I keep coming back to that because it was just so much to dig into and so many
Yeah.
ways that you can read and interpret a story that is not just straight dialogue and shot, reverse shot. It's really quite something to experience.
And just the use of advertising, both with outside of the film, because there's some really great AR advertising that I want to talk about later. But in the advertising and like this use of Sue's growing presence right outside of her apartment, was so wonderfully symbolic. For those who haven't seen it yet, Elizabeth Sparkle's apartment has this giant, gaudy portrait of herself in the back side of the room, which is already sets that up perfectly, just how, well, frankly, vain she is. And as soon as she, becomes Sue, she just tosses that shit out, and not just tosses it out, she hides it away in the back room.
The box literally says old Elizabeth stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And somehow, somewhere, I'm not sure when, because I can't imagine it'd be great for their resale value, they put up a billboard of Sue right outside of her flat, so that whenever she comes back and turns to old crotchety Elizabeth, she has to stare at her new hotness looming outside the window every waking moment.
Well, and that leads to honestly what I feel is like the most heartbreaking scene in the whole movie. And it's not even like the ending. It's the one where Elizabeth is trying to take back her own life. And she finally decided to go out on the date with this guy who thought she was perfect just the way she was.
You're still the most beautiful girl in the whole world.
Oh, it breaks your heart. And she's like in front of the mirror. She's not wearing a blue dress. She's wearing a red dress. She wants to be seen. She's wearing gloves to hide her witch finger. But she looks gorgeous. She puts on red lipstick. She wants to be noticed. She's putting herself out there. And she can't bring herself to leave the apartment. And each time, the first time is she catches a glimpse of the billboard. The next time she doesn't look at the billboard, but she can hear something. I think it's like she can hear something. And then the third time she's about to leave, and she catches her distorted reflection in the doorknob, and just it ends up being too much for her. And as somebody who has terrible anxiety and has had that happen where it's like you're just about to leave the apartment and do something and something sets you off, it's so heartbreaking. And it's because if she had gone, everything would have turned out the way, like I shouldn't say everything would have turned out, but like that things would have turned out better because she would have gotten the recognition and the adoration and things that she deserved. And it hurts so much to watch.
It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. And one thing I really love is that scene it tore me apart to watch. And Demi Moore gives a career performance in this movie, and that scene, like that's the real for sure. But one thing that I was watching is I was like, oh my God, now are we gonna fall into this thing where like she hurt this guy's feelings and we have to mop it up? And no, the focused. It says, no, it's about her and how this affects her and her journey. And so we don't fall into the trap of, okay, well, what happens to the guy that she blew off? Because it was never about the guy. It was about this reflection, self-love, and this reflection of having value that is not just your youth, your beauty, your fame in where she's going. And so I think that it used that moment effectively, and it didn't get lost in what very easily could have derailed the track that we were on.
I agree.
Oh, go ahead.
It's all right. There's just a small sense of bravery in her taking a step to reaffirm that she is worthy as she is, and to see her try and fight and keep that all the way up. At first it starts with a little glimpse in the bathroom, like, okay, well, my lips don't quite look like that, but we're gonna fix it, we're gonna put a scarf on, and then okay, we're gonna leave. No, I have to fix this. And she's trying, and it's tragic under the weight of what she's built up. And the fact that she even had the substance in the first place is a great sign of how she was feeling about herself. And when we can say, oh, self-love, but when you're up against telling you your worth is this and this and this, it is an act of bravery. And it's an act of bravery to try and stand up for yourself. And it felt so bad to just watch her stumble and fall. So
I cannot agree more. I don't have too many moments of beating up myself for my appearance, but I know there's certainly, nowadays, but a decade ago, I don't know how many times I would, get ready and kind of like she does and look at myself in the mirror and go like, oh, you know what? I don't like that one thing. I'm going to go and, I don't know, shave a little bit here, go and change that shirt there. And next thing you know, I've gone with an entire different outfit that has no little sense of confidence to it as it tries to hide everything I don't like about myself. That, I mean, I know it's, I can only imagine how much worse it is for the other side, but I guess for the guy's side of things, it's kind of a universal thing too. I think that a lot of us dudes, I think, try to ignore or deny, you know, because that's a lady thing. That's weakness. Like, no, guess what? Everyone gets self-conscious, and it felt so real to be in the moment and see it happen to someone else.
Yeah, it happens for men too. Like
Yeah.
it's absolutely something that shouldn't be underplayed. But yeah, like it does happen to men too, and that's the other side of feminism. It's for everyone.
Yeah.
On a different note,
Yes.
I want to know what is everyone's favorite scene?
I'll give you a chance, guys, to think about that. I'm curious to find out as well. Baka here is saying that this whole film is reminding them a lot of a Korean animated film. I kind of want to check out now called
Ooh.
Beauty
What?
Water. Yeah, I guess.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to watch that.
Yeah, it was.
So tell us more about it. Tell us more.
Yeah. It's a Korean animated body horror film directed by Cho Kyung-hoon. It's about a young fat makeup artist who takes care of famous actors, and I guess she discovers a beauty product called Beauty Water that would allow her to remove her weight and reshape her body to her liking. Basically, kind of like the substance, you know. She starts to enter a state of self-destructive paranoia as she discovers terrifying side effects that begin to affect her. And what sounds like she gets the stuff that makes Clayface, and I've seen how that went in an animated TV show growing up. So can you imagine with a Korean film today?
That sounds so cool. We should get together and watch that.
Yeah. No, we will, and I think we should go maybe talk about it later, because that sounds interesting.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, because you can tell we like our body horror here. But more into
Having
your
bodies is
question.
horror.
Yeah, more to your question, Tiff. What is everyone's favorite parts in the movie? I already kind of mentioned mine was also one of the most tragic, which was the scene with the board of execs and the girl, Sue, being asked to smile when she's literally falling apart. That's just... I like it for its power, not for what happens, personally.
Of course.
My favorite scene is when we have old hag. I don't know why I love this so much, but old hag
that's true.
Elizabeth dragging Elizabeth out of the bathroom, down the stairs into the living. I don't know why, but I love that shot so much where she it's because she's running on adrenaline and she just is booking it down the hallway like a little goblin, just dragging her, and she's just hitting the stairs. I love it.
Telling off
It's
that
an absolute fiendish pace too.
telling off that nosy neighbor too. Oh hi, fuck off. Okay. It's great.
What about you, Brittany?
Mine is one of the final scenes on stage where she throws up a boob. It is.
Wait, can we use the exact quote that you used? Are we allowed to use that quote?
I don't see why not. We're far enough in. I'm sure the YouTube babysitter isn't watching anymore.
I love
think
that
I leaned
term.
over to Tiffany at the end of the movie and I said, "Did this bitch just cough up a titty?" I love it. Because I never expected to see anything like, oh, okay, so she's getting sick. And it comes out and I'm like, and then it happened and I'm like, let's go. We're at the end of the roller coaster. I'm here with you. Let's go. Let's ride, bitches. Let's go. And then the more I've had time to sit and like watch it again and think on it, the more I like it because of its symbolism within the narrative. So not only was it just a really great, intense moment, and not a lot makes me go, oh my God, what the hell did I just see? Not only was it one of those moments that I so rarely get, but it fits so well into the narrative that I couldn't help but love it more. So that's mine.
I might use that as the title for the stream later on. Did
You're
that?
welcome.
I might have to kind of like naturally blurb out certain things, but like,
Right.
did that bitch just cough up a titty? Is
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing about the movie experience was just Brittany leaning over and whispering that to me, and I lost it.
For me, yes, there are more poignant moments, but my two favorite things are wild gore and body horror and theatrical devices. Like, one of my other absolute favorite movies is Pearl. And so the second that Monstro, Eliza Sue starts spinning and you see the spotlight hit them, I was like, oh, we're in it. This is for me. The rest of this movie is for me and me alone. And if no one else loves this movie, it will be my favorite movie. And it did exactly what I wanted it to. But that was the moment that I knew that it was going to be perfect in my eyes.
once again, I do have to make it truthfully clear. In the moment itself, I loved the gore and zaniness of that scene. It is a scene I think that's going to go down in history on the levels of like the Carrie massacre, and just in terms of just this release, like quite literally, of viscera, gore, and insanity that I'm here for. I just wish that the setup was different, but we've already covered that. But I enjoyed it. I've changed my mind. I think my favorite scene was probably the shrimps. No, God, no. I'm joking. I'm joking.
What's wrong with you?
A lot. But Tiffany, what was your favorite? I think you said your favorite scene already was the.
Yeah, my favorite scene was her dragging her through the hallway.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And now I've given myself, some time to think. I think, but really joking aside, my favorite scene is probably the angry cooking scene. Where, like, the second time
another
Elizabeth...
really gross scene. It's so gross.
Yeah.
And it's only just food.
Yeah.
Food is...
For context, Baka, I think it's like the second time she switches back to her old self. She looks very much almost like a cartoonish version, minus the green skin, of a witch.
She's like half. Half is really old and half is still her, and it's such a weird visual.
And she goes and opens up her last gift from her old boss, and it's like a French cookbook, and she just goes on this montage as she listens to her other self, Sue, give an interview, and she goes this whole montage of like angrily cooking with just so much hate and spite that, you know what, I feel it, that's almost like something cathartic about it, that scene. It is nasty too.
An Easter egg about that too is I'm not super familiar with the dish that she's cooking, but like the one with like the chicken or some whatever that she's cooking is like where you put it's a different type of bird that's still young and you stuff it inside the bigger bird, and so it's just like, again, with the symbolism. It's a French cuisine cookbook, but I cannot remember the name of it, and I can't pronounce it. But yeah, one of the recipes she's making is literally about stuffing a, like, not mature bird inside another bird.
Well, and they do that with food the entire movie. Every single time we see food, it is half eaten and it is disgusting. And then you have the scene where Sue, like, vomits or pulls out of her body a half-eaten chicken leg. And so to have that symbolism at the same time that you have this shot that can make you perfect and that can make you beautiful and your body is perfect and there's a lot of focus on the body, it's really a very poignant reflection on the Ozempic era right now and on the pressure for how women are supposed to feel about their eating, while at the same time there's a level of indulgence that's acceptable for men versus women. And so I loved the imagery of food, and I hated it. And that's why I loved it.
You loved that you hated it.
I love that I hated it, because that's how I think I was supposed to feel.
Which could apply to so many scenes in this goddamn movie. Before we move on to the next bit, I wanted to kind of go over. Baka mentions he's starting to get this impression of like a triple goddess vibe, which I kind of liked.
I was about to bring that up too. It has the Hecate of the maiden,
the
mother,
and
crone.
Yeah.
As soon as the maiden Elizabeth is the mother, and then she ends up turning into the crone, or the crone can also be Monster Elizastu. But they
well, the
full on
R1.
brought the triple goddess. Thank you, Baka. Thank you. You took that right out of my head.
And it makes sense, yeah, with the explorations of like the feminism and ageism combo that is this movie. But I wanted to go and bring up a quick, I think it'd be kind of a fun discussion of a question. It's two parts. The first is, do you think this should or could have a sequel? And if so, what would they go next with this tale?
I don't want
I'm
a
going to
sequel.
be such a party pooper. I
That's
don't
fine.
want it either.
That's fine. That's what's curious, yeah.
No,
I
you
don't
go
think
first,
they-
Tiff. Talk to
Me? Oh, no. I
Anything
think
more?
that you could possibly have other stories. There's obviously
Mm-hmm.
other people who have had the substance and have taken the substance, like the doctor who got it to her. But to me, the story wasn't about the substance itself. It was about this character, and this was the end of her journey. She's gone. Spoiler
Yeah.
alert, she's gone. She's not coming back. And so I don't think I would
Literally
want
swept
another
off the film.
Exactly. And so I don't want another one. I like this story as a central
Mm-hmm.
thing. And I think if you try to make it into a sequel, it's not going to be as impactful.
I mean, it'd be
Yeah.
clear a cash grab at this point. Which hasn't stopped studios before, but
hard agree on my part. I think that the metaphor that Coralie was going for with the substance, I think that every facet of it was perfectly explored, and I have nothing left for wanting. And I don't think that we'll get a sequel. There are some people online who are like, give me more. And I'm like, just rewatch the movie. You've got enough. Like, go enjoy it again.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
There's plenty there.
yeah. And considering, this is why I'm wondering if they might try to go for it to kind of like make up for past mistakes. I guess the film at one point was going to be distributed by Universal Studios, and they just dropped it off their plate. And of course, it was taken up through the independent scene, and which makes me wonder, because I agree. I don't really think this needs like a direct sequel. At the very thinnest, would have to be like a same universe kind of thing. Maybe we go and see like another crazy chemical made up by this company behind the substance. And all I really have the thing kind of tying the two together is just their weird like streaming logo, which to me still looks like a streaming service. But something else with
Interesting
the
take.
substance. I mean, that's just really how I kept seeing like the Plex server logo whenever they brought up their own logo and the substance explanation or like the pitch video. That's what I'm trying to find the word of. But if they had to, I could definitely see them going from the route of someone kind of like I was wondering earlier during the film, like how would this look if someone did respect the the back and forth, so to speak. And
Part of me wonders
what's
if that doctor was respecting it, or was he that old because that's actually how old he was and he
Yeah.
was respecting it, or was he going through the same thing that Elizabeth was going through?
I was thinking the latter personally.
No way he was respecting it, because the old man said, has he started eating away at you yet? And
Yeah.
he wouldn't say that unless you've been eating away at him. And they're
Well,
the only two people in that locker. When you see it, you got the two numbers, and I think it goes back to, for me, that if someone respected the balance, they wouldn't be taking the substance, because people
Yeah.
are taking the substance out of a desire to not be living the life they have. And so if you feel comfortable making the most of the life that you have, you won't be doing this.
Yeah, and that's why I could remind you, I don't think it would be a great film. But then again, I have been surprised before, because, alien versus aliens, substance versus the substances, that the real place they have left to explore is what would happen if you get to the point that the Matrix is at their terminal death point. Like, they are, I don't know, 70 or 90 years old even, and having to deal with the fact that even with your second chance, death is around the line, and you've been respecting it all this time. Like, that's to me is like the only possible flimsiest of things to be like, hey, what if you did get to the end? What would happen? But I'm not sure if it's worth exploring because it would take away from the central point of the film. The substance isn't the focus. It's just the instigator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do I want to see more from this director? And do I want this director and writer? Did she also write it? I don't.
I
Do you
believe
know,
so.
Jim?
I think so I said earlier.
Yeah. I want to see her get more money, more backing. You know, what happens if the world's
Yep,
her
written,
oyster? I mean,
directed,
clearly the
co-edited, co-produced.
but she's brilliant, and so I think
Oh, yeah.
that if we're gonna put our time and energy somewhere, get her something new. I want to know, what's your wildest dream? What's next? Because I trust her voice.
Yeah. 1000%.
Now, Jim, you said this
Agree.
was a two-part question. Did you have another part to that question?
Well, there was like, first, do you think, it, could or should have a sequel, and what the second part was going to be,
Gotcha,
what would that
okay.
be? Which is why I answered it the best I could from my own perspective. But I'm glad you did bring up about the director and whether she wrote it, because it goes into my last thing I wanted to bring up today, because I think it was fantastic leading up to it. The amount of advertising that went into this film. Kind of like Longlegs earlier this year, but like Fangoria sent us little tiny
I was
miniature
gonna
books.
ask if you had yours at the ready because I
Oh,
was gonna
yeah.
go to the next room and grab mine.
Yeah, no, I
I
just
love it.
when I found out we were gonna have cameras, like, yep, I'm bringing this on screen because why not? But the article in here, which is an interview with her, because there's like two of them. The first one though, with her, I guess the whole thing was perceived with her how feeling depressed she was with getting older in life, and that's what kind of spewed into this whole thing that became what the substance is today. And it's messy, it's gooey, but it's one hell of a fun ride that, once again, if you weren't here at the start and are watching here at the end, even though the destination didn't really stick the landing for me, I think it's a journey worth going on, personally.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Sorry.
It sounded like such
Yeah, it wasn't.
I was like,
I wasn't trying to end it
perfect
yet.
finale.
Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good. As far as the marketing goes, did any of you guys call the phone number before the movie? Because I did.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
I think I'm the only one who didn't.
You got the substance dude telling you about respecting the balance. And that was one of the things that I've seen people talking about online, that they're saying that you get this faceless and this very deep masculine voice that just keeps telling her what to do and telling her, take this, it'll make your life better. And so the way that it's used both as a tool in the movie for, the male gaze a little bit, but also just as excellent marketing, it reminded me a lot of Longlegs, where you could also call the number and get a freaky conversation with a freaky little dude. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here for
Kind of
freaky
like-
little calls.
It kind of reminds me of like early 2000s marketing when the internet was just becoming really big and people would have like websites connected to their movie, like what is the Matrix kind of thing. And so I think it's a really fun kind of nostalgic pull back to that, where we're getting to be interactive with the marketing again.
I really do miss that kind of multimedia marketing because, yeah, I remember being a teenager, a kid, like getting on these websites and seeing all these really cool elements I can pull and get like hyped for these movies. And especially when, it's not as easy to get hyped for movies these days because they're boring or they tell us everything in the trailer. The Longlegs and the substance marketing, brilliant. Really a big fan.
And the
I want more of it.
the trailer's use of their very specific score, it sticks in your head. You know exactly what it's from. Like, I loved the score and the synth so much.
I do love me some good
it's a
synth.
serve.
I do love me some good synth, but goddamn, hearing Kaiju Sue rock up to the front of the stage to the tone of
Da,
yeah,
da,
da, dun,
That is a
dun,
moment,
dun.
Jim, where I could definitely get close to your take of this is getting silly.
Yeah.
But it was also not so far for me that I was against it. But that is one of the moments where I think the veil between our worlds was the thinnest. So
Yeah.
I feel like that is just as silly as the TV show Pump It Up was displayed to be. And that's why
Oh
for
my,
me, I'm like,
it's so ridiculous.
just silly the whole time, because Pump It Up is ridiculous and it is so over the top. And so I want that same level of ridiculous when she's not attractive. And I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Look
I
at camera too.
Okay, it reminds me of something. Jim,
Yes.
sorry, Jim, do we have a moment that I can touch briefly on, like, bodies and nudity? In the-
Sure. I mean, this is the internet. It does love its talk of bodies and nudity.
Well, I just wanted to talk briefly because I know I've talked to all you guys about this separately, but that there is lots of boobs and butts and legs and crotch in this movie, and I don't feel like it was necessarily male gazy. It felt like it was the National Geographic of male gaze. Like, this is what the male gaze looks like. Like, it felt scientific, not exactly, but it felt like this is what it should be, but we know it's not. And so it felt like a different way of viewing the way that society views women's bodies. Like, I don't know how to describe it beyond it was male gazy, but it wasn't male gazy.
Yeah.
Like,
And it gives you
I mean, there's only one true scene in the entire film that is like full on being exploitative and doing like, yep, we're here to give you some fine eye candy, and that is during Sue's a sex scene with her first boyfriend, and you have like the fisheye view of her ass as his hands go over her butt.
And you hear the leather.
You can feel it. You know, it's you know what? Despite everything else you know what? Yeah, that's where the camera's kind of going, to my opinion, to the levels of, yep, we're here to respect that ass. My God, you could
Well, for me, I think that there's something very clever that's happening, because I think that we get two very styles of filming the nude body. You
Yeah.
have Sue and Elizabeth when they are by themselves, and that is when a woman looks at herself in the mirror. And even when she's Sue and she's admiring herself versus when she's Elizabeth and she's analyzing herself, we are looking at ourself in the mirror, because that's how it feels to me. It feels very resonant in the forms of she's calculating her size. She's comparing herself. She's body checking. She's taking it all in. Even in the shower, you're just seeing her as a person, but like it's very technical, it's scientific. And then when she's in the world, whether she's, you know, in the sex scene or in Pump It Up, or even the scene where Sue's just walking down the street and we're looking up her skirt, that's where you get that National Geographic version of the male gaze. So it's very interesting to see someone capture how we perceive our bodies and how our bodies are perceived, because you have the vision of here's how we look at ourselves, and it is still just as critical of the body but in a very different tone, versus here's how the world sees us, and it is very critical of the body, but in this is what the male gaze and what society is looking for.
It's almost
yeah,
like
that was a great way to put it.
Yeah. It's almost like if the level of just male gaziness in any particular scene is meant to kind of reflect like how, like, I guess Sue or Elizabeth are feeling about themselves, which I kind of like now in hindsight. Like, the more like the camera's just like giving you all kinds of eye candy, once you kind of feel how like Sue felt during getting to finally go and get it on with this sexy young guy after who knows how long that's happened for her. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but it's weird.
Speaking of butts too, like the butt shots are not just of Sue and Elizabeth, but it feels weird that they're telling a story with an ass.
Yeah.
Where when she's taking the substance, she's naked, and we get a very close in shot on her naked butt. And then we get Sue, and we get a very close-in shot of her butt. And then let me fast forward, and we're to the point where she has now been Sue for 3 months. We get crone Elizabeth waking up with her, and you get a zoom in of her just like old hag, saggy butt. But then the guy is trying to get in there, and it's a zoom in of his hairy butt, and it's just like all butt. but it's like this weird story with it. I don't know how to express that, but I'm just like, there's a lot of ass, but there's a story that goes with this ass.
I mean, it could be very possible that the director just happens to like some good booty. I mean, they are telling a story about like, you know, the importance of loving yourself, but they are human. But that said, I don't think it's anything that crass. It is certainly, I think, I like the term, you know, National Geographian about the journey of ass in this film.
Well, and it's close. You get two very different perspectives on it. And so I feel like there's the internalized feeling about nudity as a woman, and then the externalized feeling about your body as a woman. And it's just, I mean, it's like she crawled inside my brain and made a movie. Like, I can't yap enough about how much I feel seen and understood by the perspective. I just keep getting carried away. I just love it.
It's very, very good. And here at the end, I do one final question, at least for me. How would you rate it on a 10-point scale?
I would give it 8.
I would allow that.
Actually, I think I'd give it 8.5.
Oh, okay.
Because it was so good. Are there things that I felt that weren't my favorite in it? Yeah, because I rarely ever would give anything a perfect. I'm very indecisive when it comes to stuff. But okay. I really resonated with this movie, especially seeing it multiple times and getting to kind of sit with it again. I think it's like an 8.59 for me.
All right.
I'll be less catty. I know I said 1,000, but for me, this might be my favorite movie. Like, I tend to be a very critical person, even in movies I love. There are things that I have issues with, and I genuinely don't think I have a note on this one. And so I can't help but give it a 10, but it's just like, you know, you gotta have a movie that you love that much, and I'm glad that I did, because I haven't given really high ratings to movies lately.
Yeah. So for me, I would probably do a 9 out of 10, which I think is even higher than the rating I may have given it on the quick car cut that Tiff and I did.
I don't honestly remember what rating we gave it on the quick car. But again, that goes to show, like, quick car cuts are our first initial thoughts, and now we get to sit down and actually think about it and develop a different type of opinion.
Right. And, you know, this is a movie where I like it a lot. I really do. And if I think about what are my 10 out of 10 movies that I could put on all the time with no thought, it's probably not quite there, but very few movies make it there for me. Very few. And I mean, I think that's how most people's 10 out of 10s are. Like, Kimberly, this is definitely one of those for you, and I'm really happy that you have it. And this is a movie that if someone's like, I'm watching The Substance, I'm like, give me 10 minutes, I'll be there. I want to watch it with you. I want to talk about it. I want to see it again. Because the more I sit with it and the more times I watch it, the more I enjoy it. And it really just goes to show just how some pieces of art can stick with you. And the more, it gives you more to chew on. And the more I chew on it, the more I like it. Which you really don't want to chew most things in that movie. But I do want to chew on the movie itself. So I give it a 9 out of 10.
I don't know. I mean,
Disagree.
The chicken leg.
You chewed the chicken leg?
Yeah, the belly button chicken leg looks still pretty damn whole. I don't know. For me, it might come a bit of a surprise, but I'll probably give it a 9 out of 10. Where
nice.
Yeah, where like the ending is really what to me that really kind of stops it from being a full-on 10. Like, to me, the story is too important, too great of a journey to give it any less. And well, I have my complications with that ending. I've seen much worse, and I think it's something I would recommend. Yeah. And to me, you know, this I will also add in that I did like Long Legs better than this. I did say that last night as far as my horror films this year. Yeah, I did enjoy the Leggy more than the Subsy. But, you know, to each their own.
Honestly, though, knowing both you and Kimberly, if I had to guess who liked what movie better, my guess would have been you would have liked Long Legs better, and Kimberly would have liked The Substance better. I also don't know where I am in your stream, so I pointed at where you guys are on my screen, so this might just be completely out of there.
Yeah, I mean, I have...
We're just in a row up on the screen.
Yeah. In case you want to know, Kimberly is to your upper left side. Yeah, that's Brittany. So then, yeah, Kimberly is over there. You go. It's like the Brady Bunch. But cool. No. Either way, here at the end, thank you all for joining me today. I actually kind of enjoyed this better than I thought it was. Doing it stream live like this, I think this is much more relaxed and, yes, much easier to edit than it was the others. But this brings
Thank you, Baka, for giving us good suggestions of things to watch.
Yeah.
Baka in the house.
Yeah, this there's always a delay when it comes to the chat, so I'm assuming they're reacting to my long legs bit because they say they saw long legs semi recently. Nick Cage, certainly Nick Caged in that movie, and yes, very yes.
He Nick Caged harder than he's ever Nick Caged.
I sing those lyrics way too much in regular public. No, I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, and I should bring up, because they did say this earlier when they mentioned Beauty Water, that don't quote them on its quality. Like, they're not sure if it's actually any good, but I do appreciate the point in the direction of more like this, because that's always kind of fun to see how other cultures do it. But I wanted to bring up how much I enjoyed this, because I think I would love to do this again in 2 weeks. And I wanted to see, before we leave, what would you all be interested in watching? Because personally, I was thinking of doing Alien Romulus.
I have not seen Alien Romulus yet, so I would love that.
I take it.
Kick out my fucking vote.
I take that as a yes.
Brittany's trying to come into the screen and be like, yes.
I've been waiting. I've been waiting to watch Alien Romulus with people. I haven't seen it yet,
Nor
and it's
I.
one of my greatest regrets of this year. I want to watch it.
I thought you all did.
You're not supposed to eat You're not supposed to eat the microphone.
I'll eat whatever I want.
Me?
Okay.
Kimberly.
Oh, zesty. All right. Any final words before? Yes.
You have to dress up as Ripley. You have to dress as Ripley.
Yeah, Brittany, you have to dress up as Ripley.
I'll do it. I'll do it for you.
I'm tempted.
Not my favorite, but I'll do it for you. Oh, copyright strike. We shouldn't do that.
It's fine. I mean, they're not gonna get it from just you singing. At least I don't think they will. I mean, we did do the. What's that?
Yeah, we did. We did do the whole score bit.
Yeah, the Stanley anthem, in my opinion. Anyway, cool.
Not to shut you guys down, but I don't know if the score is gonna get us flagged. The general, but I think we'll be all right.
It's a cover. As far as I'm concerned. But anyway, cool. Yeah. In that case, we'll make some plans to watch it. Alien Romulus, and we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about that, which is fucking cool because I've been wanting to see it. I love the director behind it. I think he did the Evil Dead remake, and I've seen so many, snips and shots of all the practical effects. Yeah. And Baka does.
I did have a big thing spoiled for me, and I saw the behind the scenes, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's amazing! I need to see it."
And apparently, Baka gives his approval of it as well. So cool. That's all we need to know, Baka.
Then that's all I need to know.
No one else's opinion matters, not even ours, as long as the great Tanuki likes it. Anyway, thank you all again. I'm going to do my outro, and we'll see you all soon enough. And thank you all so much today for joining us. It was great to have you here. Don't forget to check out the links down below for my Patreon and other links to my friends' shit up above because they do some cool stuff. Also subscribe to me. I need to make sure it's on there because I'm not sure if I put on Britt and Tiff's YouTube channel. They do cool car cuts when they see films. More importantly, if you haven't already and you've listened to this far into this podcast stream or whatever, why don't you subscribe? Just do it. Do it, you dogs! And also like and comment on other films you think we should go and talk about or gush about. Also, quick shout out to my patrons, Wally, Asra, Moody, Lodum, Idiot, and Fantagool. Love you all. You take care. Bye-bye.